To begin, we need to assign the correct MIDI routing. Assign your MIDI keyboard to Texturium's MIDI input, so we avoid Texturium sending MIDI signals to itself. Then assign Texturium All as the MIDI input of the plugin you want to play. In this case, I'm using Contact, but you can use whatever you like. Set the channel to Any so Texturium can freely send signals to all instruments inside Contact. Now, by holding the Alt key and clicking, we can generate the first clip. You can also use the Draw tool, but I find shortcuts more convenient. Double-click to open the piano roll. Draw a note by holding Alt plus click. The pitch doesn't matter. When SATB mode is enabled, Texturium only considers the timing of the note. Pressing Ctrl plus D duplicates the clip next to it. You can also right-click a clip and copy/paste it. Or you can drag the clip outside the interface and bring it back in. This also allows you to copy it into the DAW. Enable playback on all tracks and have some fun. Oops, it's already over. We need to enable loop mode. As you can see, at the moment you can only play in C major, since the key signature is set to C major. By enabling free mode, you can play freely across the chromatic scale. When you go outside the instrument's range, an algorithm recycles the notes starting from the opposite range. You can disable this feature or reduce the recycling range. Texturium already works like this, but for better results, I recommend assigning each instrument to a bus track. In Settings, you can choose how many bus tracks to use. After selecting the number, you need to restart the plugin for the changes to take effect. Ableton and Fruity Loops don't have native VST3 bus management, so I implemented a virtual port system. To use it, you need external software to create the ports. I tested with Loop MIDI and it works fairly well. I'll make a dedicated tutorial later. For now, I'll only use MIDI buses. Add MIDI tracks for each instrument and select the corresponding bus. The grace notes you heard are due to voice management. Unfortunately, it's still difficult to create something that can predict the future. So I recommend thinking of Texturium as a new musical instrument. You need to learn how to play it. In any case, once recorded, you can just remove the imperfections and your project is basically ready, just needs refinement. This is the routing map of the different voices. The better you play the voices in the correct order, the better the result will be. Playing the third of a chord before the root will make the bass play the third first, then move to the root. As I said, predicting future intention is still complex. However, I'm constantly working on the software. For now, I added a 10 millisecond delay between input and output so it has time to manage routing. Now let's see how it behaves with staccato. The result isn't great. A key feature of Texturium is key switch management. Meanwhile, let's fix the clips. Use Ctrl+D to copy them, and Ctrl+G to group/paste them all. To manage key switches, press the KS button. The KS button is simply a pass-through. It ignores MIDI input and sends the selected MIDI note. Write the key switch note. You can find it in your instrument's manual, and you're done. Depending on how hard you press the key, Texturium will play at different volumes. If you want a fixed velocity, press Note-Vel and it will ignore input velocity. Copy the clip to each track. Play it. Here's the range management issue I mentioned earlier. Sometimes it's useful to have very high notes on bass instruments, but in this case, it's better to reduce the octave recycling range. Much better. Texturium also supports a highly customizable arpeggiator. The basic system assigns each incoming note to a chosen voice in sequence. For example, if we write 1, 2, 3, Texturium assigns the lowest voice to the first note, then the second, then the third. If a voice isn't played, it loops and assigns to a coherent multiple of the played notes. There are preset patterns, but you can change routing however you like. There's also a random generator based on how many notes you want to rotate. Now, let's clear everything and write some random notes. Select the sequencer mode from the voicing selector. Regardless of which note we play, Texturium will play the clip exactly as it is. This isn't a great result. Let's switch back to SATB mode and add more random notes. As you can see, SATB is purely rhythmic. Now in the arpeggiator, select Pattern. The pattern system takes the lowest note as a reference and transposes. We're in chromatic mode, so intervals stay constant. If you select a scale, the intervals will be forced into that scale. Enable all tracks and listen. Much better, right? Now let's create something more structured. Texturium can also manage instrument dynamics. After inserting a note, go to the Control Change panel. Here you can control modulation and expression. In the future, I might add a system to select which CC to control. Enable No CC to ignore MIDI CC input, so moving mod wheel or controls won't affect performance. Next to it, MODI to Vel lets you control velocity via modulation wheel if the instrument uses velocity for dynamics. Now let's write some modulation and see how it behaves. Now it's time to introduce Texturium's main feature, layering. Below the sequencer, you'll find buttons from 1 to 8, depending on your version. Light version, 2 layers. Standard, 4. Pro, 8. Each layer has its own settings, arpeggios, and clips, so you need to reconfigure parameters per layer if you want to keep the same patterns. Let's add a French horn for more impact. Two notes aren't playing. That means the instrument has a different range than the default. To fix it, find its range in the piano roll. Great. C1 to C4. Set it in the range panel. Lower the volume a bit since it's too dominant. Now it's time for percussion. You can select a percussion instrument directly. It already works in sequencer mode, but I prefer using a custom track. Custom track lets you name the instrument for clarity. Set voicing to sequencer, and you'll have your custom percussion track. Add the MIDI track, assign the bus, and create a clip. Perfect, it's starting to take shape. Setting key ranges every time can be frustrating, so you can create your own library by saving configured instruments. Go to Presets and add entries to the browser. Then just search and click Add. Not needed now, so I'll remove it. Another key feature is Link. Link connects all Texturium instances. It allows controlling all layers from a single instance. Let's load another instance with instruments. Set the ranges. Everything looks ready. Each layer has its own loop zone, but you can change it using the green and yellow markers on the sequencer timeline. Press Link on both instances and switch layers using keyboard keys 1 to 8. And that's it. You now have everything you need to create textures and play them in real time.